Have you ever thought about the Old Testament and all the sacrifices that God required? I don't know if you've ever thought about all those sacrifices, but here are some of the things that people had to sacrifice. They had to sacrifice bulls. They had to sacrifice sheep. They had to sacrifice goats. They had to sacrifice birds. They had to even sacrifice things like grain and wine. Pretty much, if they owned it, they had to sacrifice it at some point. Have you ever thought about why that is? Why did God require the Israelites to sacrifice things? In Exodus, the book that we're studying right now, God required a sacrifice of a sheep, a little lamb, in order to put over their doorpost so that their firstborn son wasn't killed along with the Egyptians. Why? Why all this? Does God enjoy these sacrifices? Did he like it? I want to read a passage from Isaiah chapter 1, verse 11. It says this: "What makes you think that I want all your sacrifices?" These are, of course, by the way, sacrifices that God commanded them to make. What makes you think I want those, God says? "In fact, I am sick of your burnt offerings, of rams and the fat of fattened cattle. I get no pleasure from the blood of bulls and lambs and goats." See, God says that isn't actually what brings me pleasure. I don't like that. That's not what I'm about. I'm not just the God of killing animals. I don't enjoy that, God says. See, the Israelites, they started to think like, oh, we can commit these sins because God says if we can commit a sin, then we just had to make this sacrifice. So I'm going to do what I want because I can afford to lose this sacrifice. And God says, no, I don't want that. So why do they exist then? Why did God tell them to do something that he didn't even want? Here's the deal. Romans 6, verse 23 says this: "The wages, the cost of sin is death." The cost of sin is death. God didn't want sacrifices. He didn't want death. But sin had a cost. Sin had a price. And there was no way for the Israelites to really understand how much it cost without death being a part of it. And so God instituted these sacrifices. He says, you're going to bring sacrifices. Every time you screw up, something's going to pay for that with with its life. Super unfortunate, because God never even wanted that. But here's the deal. God knew that wouldn't sustain long term anyway. He knew that the only real way to pay for sin was either for everybody to pay for their own sin, for the sin that you committed to be paid for with your life, or for him to send his son to pay for everybody's sin. John verse 29 of chapter 1 says this: "The next day John saw Jesus coming. Jesus was coming toward him, and he said, 'Look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world.'" See, all these sacrifices, these lambs would be brought in to cover people's sin over. And John the Baptist saw Jesus coming, and he says, here's the ultimate lamb. Not a lamb that just covers it over, that next time you sin will need another sacrifice. He says Jesus is a lamb, but he's the Lamb of God that takes away sin. Ultimately, the only way to really pay for sin was for God to do what these sheep had been doing before. To cover over sin in the Old Testament, to just kind of put it off to the side for a while. It cost a goat its life, and the people of Israel needed to see that. It would cost a sheep its life. It would cost a cow its life. They needed to see that sin wasn't something to be joked about. It wasn't to be taken lightly. And so every time they sinned, something would pay for it with its life. But ultimately, to forgive sin, it couldn't be a sheep that died. It couldn't be a lamb that died. It couldn't be a goat that died. It couldn't be a cow that died. To pay for sin, it had to be a God that died. And so God gave up his life. Jesus Christ gave up his life so that we could live, so that we wouldn't have to pay that price. I'm so grateful for that. I'm so thankful for all of you. I hope that you have come to know Jesus and to see the sacrifice that he made for you. If you haven't done that, if you haven't said, Jesus, I want that sacrifice. I want you to forgive me for my sins. Please talk to your parents. Talk to the Christians that you know and love. Ask them about that. Ask them what it really means to be a Christian. In the meantime, make sure you download the Buck Denver videos this week in your email. I miss seeing so many of you so much, and I look forward to hopefully we can see each other again soon. Until next time, have a wonderful week and God bless.